Today's video is brought to you by my amazing patrons on Patreon. Priority deck requests and extended discussions are just some of the many perks you get for being a patron. Consider supporting the channel today. Welcome back to today's build. Whether you're just looking for upgrades or have no idea how to build this deck, I'll be your guide to this wonderful game we all love. Let's get started. Today's deck is descended from the king. His name is Aragorn the Uniter, and this is my friend's Bow to No One. Like a lot of so-called good stuff commanders, it can be difficult to know what direction to build the deck in. A classic example is Kenrith the Returned King, a ruler whose parents forced him to grow up to be a king of combos, but deep down never forgot his dreams of being a creature deck. 3 of Aragorn's payoffs align well too. The green and white payoffs both deliver board presence, which is easily exchanged for damage, the red payoff. But another way to look at this card is its triggers. These all trigger on cast, so one way to get more out of it is to cast more spells, and to try to cast more multicolored spells. I want to emphasize though that this is not clearly a multicolor spells deck. It's true that if all other things are equal, then more colors is better. Join the Dance would be better than Raise the Alarm, but not better than Fungal Sprouting. Consider this. A deck that had all white spells would have every card making a token, and a deck that had all green spells could easily suit up a Voltron win, or even just a Power Matters strategy. With all these options, it can be difficult to know what deck to build. When this happens, it's helpful to take hints from the cards that you'd want most in both decks, and see which direction those cards most lean towards, which is one way to establish a through line for these and other good stuff decks. In this case, there are very few cards that care about multicolored spells that point towards a storm build, but a lot of cards that turn spellcasts into advantages for board presence. So even though Aragorn is content with either of his favored strategies, the cards that would go in this deck most want to be a part of this strategy, and that's the deck we'll build. Between these 3 abilities, the white payoff adds 1 power, and the red payoff adds 3 damage, but the green payoff does the most, adding 4 power that we can turn into damage with Evasion, and capitalize on with cards that care about power. These cards really emphasize the multicolored idea for the deck, and as we've already said, that's not necessarily what Aragorn really asks of you. Charms and other modal spells work best when they have some modes that are interaction and others that advance your game plan so that you don't lose any tempo by holding up the mana. But Bant Charm is 3 modes of interaction, and it's not a graveyard deck, so Naya Charm does very little to advance our game plan. While Rien kind of protects our commander, the creatures we're going wide with are monocolored human tokens, not multicolored creatures necessarily. If we're after protection, we can do a lot better than this. Meanwhile, these Lord of the Ring cards are flavorful, but they taste like failure. These cards all do really well, but when we already have a full board, don't do enough to push us over the edge to a victory. Classically, those effects have been called win more cards, and are usually not as good as you think they are. We'll make these swaps instead. Lastly, Cultivate and Chromatic Lantern are too slow for Aragorn. If we're going to be able to get him out and protect him, we can't be playing 3 mana ramp spells that only boost us by 1 mana. The mana fixing is nice, but our lands really have it covered. And Theoden's Double Strike can't work twice on the same creature, and is ineffective when applied to our 1/1s, so he wants us to have a board of big creatures and already basically be winning. We'll swap them out to make room for these cards instead. So what do our lands look like? In a 4-color deck, we really need to emphasize mana fixing, so dual lands are the order of the day. but since our curve tops out at 6, there are a lot of turns where we don't need so many lands. So Cabaret Courtyard and some of the cheaper Horizon lands will smooth out our late game rhythm. I'm also including some of these biome lands as targets for Farseek in the early game that can be cheaply cycled away late game. So what's our timeline? Early on, our first priority is setting up our mana for the future. Mana that's not only useful for the rest of the deck, but to recast our commander, and since Aragorn quickly becomes a kill-on-sight threat, these cards will solve that problem nicely. Turn 3, some of our best plays are Aura Shards, a Talon Jackal, and Inga and Asika for interaction, ramp on a Trampler, and card draw on ramp as well. Next, we'll need to start setting up engines because our hand will start emptying quickly. Eowyn, Aragorn, and Kindred Discovery are some of our best options here. We usually don't want Aragorn in play until turn 5 or later when we can actually protect him. Playgroups quickly learn that if you let Aragorn untap, he'll get run over with cards like Traverse the Outlands, Rishkar's Expertise, and Hunter's Prowess. So we'll protect our board with cards like Boros Charm, Izzet Charm, and Decisive Denial, start digging through our deck, and find Overwhelming Stampede to give each of our creatures an amazing power boost to close things out. This deck is one of those that varies in how it performs. You're never winning before turn 6, but it's really easy to drown your opponents in advantage with some of these green spells, since Aragorn's ability will resolve before the spell does. With more fast mana and a higher budget, this would easily approach EDH territory. But today, we'll rest comfortably here.
A very special thanks to all my amazing patrons. When I started this channel, I wanted to talk about deck building decisions with my videos, but in practice what ends up happening is that I talk for 30 minutes about all the nuance of a deck, which is longer than I'm comfortable with posting to YouTube. Here, patrons can request priority deck techs, access extended discussions on their favorite decks, in-depth guides on complex game actions, and more.
So if you enjoyed this content, consider becoming a patron today. One of the things my patrons have made possible is a special series of deck techs that I'm really excited to show off to you guys. When I finally get them all uploaded, I'll be giving away a special collection of altars and tokens that I've made, corresponding to each deck on the channel. For example, for the Merkle Lord of Bones deck, the prize is a set of double-faced altars of the most prominent cards in the deck, whose backsides are set in the constellation frame with updated text to show that they're acting as enchantments now. For every 1,000 views on each video, I'll increase the prize pool for that deck. All you have to do to be eligible to win is be subscribed to the channel.
Consider supporting the channel today. If you like this video, here are some of the decks I'm working on next, so if you like what you see, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any, and check out the playlist in the top left for more. Thanks for watching!